All right, welcome to Raising Funds for World Domination, Day 76. So today, there's no updates on this. Next hearing still October 6th. Today I worked on and finished a new video. It's just a super simple, I think it's like 24-second long shorts video to just state what the block mining simulation game is. That's an overdue thing to get out, but I think it's scheduled for tomorrow. I think if you're a channel member, if you're one of the elite few that can watch it already. Today no work on the world domination plans. Let's continue with work on the terminal block mining simulation game. So yesterday I did just a tiny amount of work on my refactoring arc now is simplifying the tracking of screen regions and information related to how the layers get merged and have difference calculations and stuff. So let's run it and make sure. Oh, and I also found a bug last night in I think it was opening a frame, the inventory map area frame, and that was also another bug. I just fixed that quick. Yeah, that was here. Just needed to initialize this. Initialize the empty frame. Sam sends a wave. Orthoplex 64 sends an emoji wave. How's it going? Game Dev Chad sends an increasing stock chart. Excellent. That implies that you made money in the market, which is excellent. Keep doing that. All right, game appears to work. The menu works. There's no bugs. Before I go too far, let's actually go through the test. The frame test. Gyro Zapelli says ooh. All right, this appears to work. That looks correct. All right, no bugs. Excellent. I'm convinced C++ devs can't count past 11. So many of them are stuck on C++ 11. I don't know if it'd be stuck. If I was going to use C++, honestly, I would probably stick to an older standard. I don't even know what, like C++ 11, I guess presumably would have come out around 2011. And that was already when that was already at the point when I had like considered that I had learned C++. But, you know, in the subsequent year, like after I learned the language once, I don't have time to go back and constantly relearn it. What's the latest standard? Like 17? I have actually I don't even know any of the features that are in anything after C11. Like if you asked me for something that was added after C11, I don't know. C++ 23. That's in the post-COVID era. That's almost insane to think that there's like versions of the C standard that were created after COVID. I bet they're terrible. I bet there's like, that was when everyone had been in quarantine and was going insane. And they had nothing better to do than write the most insane specifications for the standard. The module spec is where things got weird. I don't even know about that. This is the first I've ever heard about modules in C++. Rust. I guess that's the alternative now. C++ 20 for most of my projects presently. 17 is nice. Honestly, if you start a project now and pick C++ 11, then something's wrong with you. Yeah, I guess what would be an example of a difference between 11 that, like if I use 11, what am I missing out on? My understanding is there was a lot of legwork compilers and tooling had to support modules. I import styles. Have them coexist with headers, since C++ doesn't have an official build system like Cargo. Yeah, I know about imports and stuff, but I guess what is the difference between an import and a module? I don't even know. speed up for compilation. Caches your modules after you build them. That must be another huge source of debugging problems. I guess it would be good for really big builds. Nvidia reached $4 trillion market cap today. That's quite a bit. If only I could go back in time and stay working there and hold on to the stock. That's all because of the test suite that I see. I was there in 2012. So check the I don't remember the Nvidia stock chart. Check their stock chart. So if Nvidia stock started to take off in 2012, then I take all the credit. It's because of my good test dashboard where everyone could iterate fast. So the dollar has fallen closer to 3.3, 3.6. Yeah, actually, I was watching a podcast where they pointed that out, that the dollar has been falling quite a bit, mostly due to asset inflation. I think the big companies like Meta pushed for modules exactly for speeding up builds. Yeah, I would imagine for like large proprietary stuff, it probably would be a massive difference, and probably like it would probably save them like real amounts of money on compute. I was at the 2015 NVIDIA GPU Tech Conference. Jensen was really working hard to get all these compute-based workloads running on their GPUs. Huge attendance, pre-LLMs. Yeah, they had they were like in the process of, I think I remember back when I actually worked there in 2012 or something. I think they actually had a Tesla on like NVIDIA campus for a little while, and they were doing some show and tell or something. I didn't follow what it was about. Jensen Huang should be the only MF allowed to wear a leather jacket at that capitalization. Yeah, he should get like an ostentatious red, like a really nice red one or something super showy. Or get some like tattoos or something. Wish I bought some Nvidia stock back then. Yep, we all do. Seen the pirate software coding drama lately? Yeah, that does. It's kind of interesting how that's popping off. Honestly, it's I mean, there was the drama with him with that, like what is it, Stop Killing Games campaign. And then something popped up on my feed about someone reviewing some code that he did, but there was only like a couple lines of code, and they were criticizing like how he initialized some arrays and stuff for overblown. Yeah, actually, I saw a couple of videos of people like reacting to it and stuff. Honestly, I think it is good. Like, even though it's like stupid reaction drama. The fact that like coding drama is becoming mainstream means that I think this is like bodes well for getting people into software development and technological professions. Because otherwise, if people are focused on drama about like, you know, the like celebrity drama, celebrity relationship drama or something like that, it's not productive. It's an interesting character for sure. He certainly could at farming the situation. I remember they had someone high up from the medicine department of Harvard giving a talk on GPU-based medical imaging classification, and he said he wanted to assure radiologists that there was no threat to their careers, but was confiding in us that he wanted to see the tech explode and replace the radiologists anyways. I mean, there's still going to be jobs for there's going to be out of band information. Like, you still need, I think ideally you'd want someone to review. You'd want it to review the LLMs. As I think there was some correlation found with X-rays. And the correlation just ended up being like older machines had like a different amount of contrast or something. And that's what it was basing its decisions on, as opposed to like the actual data in the image itself. TBH, video game devs write bad code, and maybe to a certain extent it's justified. Once a game is written, its code isn't reused like other software. Yeah, there's I mean, especially at those at like actual industry game dev companies, the like it's perpetual crunch time, and like having design decisions and stuff changed all the time, and Like that would be the worst if some project manager or someone who doesn't play the game or care about the game will tell you like, don't worry, you can build it to like not have this area in the game. And then they come to you and they're like, oh, actually, no, you got to implement multiplayer, even though I told you it's not going to be multiplayer. Or like, you spend all this time writing multiplayer and then like just be like, the first release won't have it, but we'll enable it later. So you push this like half-broken thing with the intention of fixing it later, but then you never do because the funding doesn't come, the sales are bad, or like that kind of environment will absolutely produce bad code. And sometimes it's like that's the only thing you can do is just to compromise to produce some revenue and keep the business alive. Galactic Pest says, hello, Robert. How's it going? The drama becomes death threats and swatting, people making fun of his code, his voice. Yeah, it's unfortunate if it's getting to that level, but I mean, at that, with the amount of views he gets, I guess it's kind of that kind of comes with the territory of the occupation of being publicly on the internet. I'd imagine even in AAA games, there's so much removed stuff. Yeah, I've heard lots of bad things about game dev companies. I once dumped the source for Hollow Knight Unity game into and looked a mess, apparently because they used a visual scripting system called Playmaker. Now, okay, so it's like generated code, I guess. Giant switch statements. Game dev is hard. Again, it's one of the most underappreciated. We're talking about pirate software. Yeah, someone mentioned that a bit before. Game dev seems to have a lot of burnout issues. Yeah, from what I understand, it's an industry. It's one of those industries where exploitation of the passionate is like, part of the business model. Kind of like, from what I understand, like the at least how the animation industry is, or I don't even know if can you still get hired as an animator now? I mean, from what I understand, like I don't actually watch anime, but from what I've heard, those like Japanese anime shows and stuff like that, they had like incredible burnout, and it was people paid like a pittance to spend days and days and days drawing stuff. I'm glad Robert doesn't mention he worked at Timsia AWS after making it a point. I mention it sometimes. I got a couple of videos on it. Technically, I was only an intern, so. Although I did 2 internships at Amazon. I feel like people are putting him on a pedestal and scrutinizing every move. Yeah, I mean, for some of like the critiques of him, to me, it just seems like much ado about nothing in particular. But like I said, if it's as long as the fact that the people are involved in a drama about like a technical profession, as opposed to like, think about how many more stupid dramas there could be. Like think about all the various like Twitch dramas and stuff that exist, and how much how much human mental effort is wasted on that. But if people are arguing about, if you can get like regular people that argue about code quality, then I think that's an improvement for all of society. Hey Robert, what happened to you getting illegally kicked out of the apartment so the landlord can raise prices? Did you resolve that? Is it still ongoing? So the current status of that is my original N13 merits hearing, which is a hearing to review the necessity of obtaining vacant possession, so getting an eviction order to evict. The first scheduled hearing was going to be February 19th. On January of 2025, that got canceled, and then I got pulled into an earlier case management hearing on January 27th. So I had to kind of scramble to get evidence together, and that was a hearing, like a preliminary hearing, with me and all the other people in the building who are also in the same situation. So there were 60-something eviction notices sent out, N13s, or not, sorry, not eviction notices, but N13 eviction application things. The conclusion of that hearing was to combine the hearings together, and that it was adjourned to actually have the first N13 merits, and that occurred on May 26th. And then I just like a couple of weeks ago, I got notice of the next hearing date. So this will be the second hearing. The second, so we heard a bunch of witnesses, and there was another witness that was about to testify, but we ran out of time. So that we'll hear that witness at the next hearing on October 6th. So that'll be the third hearing that we've attended, the fourth one that's been scheduled, and there might even be another hearing after. So if this one is not conclusive, then there's even more arguments. We could even have, could go into next year. But so at this time, there was no, the tenant board has not issued any formal eviction orders for anyone who received the N13 applications. So, and until there's an eviction order, we just continue under the existing terms. So they haven't gotten rid of me yet. Animation is a rough industry as well. Some of them are working 100 plus hours per week. Yeah, isn't that insane? Like, does that industry even exist anymore? Like, imagine, like that would have been so, I don't know, rough and stressful to be working in that industry back then. But at least you're like creating something unique. But now you're competing with AI and working 100 hours a week. I can't imagine what that's like. The only drama I pay attention to in tech is when Linus rakes someone over the coals on the mailing list. And it's decent drama. I guess maybe we need, like, people like drama gets attention. That would be it'd be nice if, like, the mainstream, like the Hollywood celebrity drama, if that got totally replaced with, like, what technical mailing list drama happened. I mean, if you presented it well enough, that some of that drama is probably even more entertaining. Linus kicked I don't know how to say that, but Chefs out of Linux. Yeah, I think I didn't look into it. There was some conflict between him and another person, probably that individual, recently about what was it? Was it a file system feature or something? Watched one or two videos of Coding Jesus, and he seems to be an avid fan of the code cleanup book. Rather than finding out if an application is adept at solving problems, he focuses on if the candidate memorized the C++ feature set. Yeah, actually, I think I saw it was his video that popped up in my recommended feed. I mean, some of his critiques seemed like, in my opinion, like they were not wrong, but they were just like very kind of basic takes. I think that there were critiques that would be very valuable to a first-year computer science student, but then to an experienced developer, you just kind of roll your eyes and be like, I could fix that, but is it really worth it? If you have to bet, do you think you will win this, or will you move out? I think the way it's going now, so he actually lost at a bunch of other buildings. Because he's doing the same thing in a whole bunch of buildings he has. So he already lost some of his cases at other buildings, and at the last hearing, he actually lost on a number of the cases, the existing cases in this building, due to like some technicalities that didn't apply in my case. So I kind of think the evidence is pretty strongly in our favor, in my opinion. I'd be kind of surprised if we lose at this point, but you never know. But in a way, it's like technically he's already won, because a lot of people were just like, they don't want to deal with this. I think it was something like 60 something N13s handed out in this building. There's less than 30 people who are still here fighting it. And I mean, there's a lot of old people in the building. I think like a couple of people died during the process, and a few people just like moved out and stuff. So it's just like a war of attrition. And yeah, I don't know if it ends up being approximately half or so that win, it's still a decent win, but there's still quite a bit of profitability and just creating all this disruption and having all these hearings and stuff. For C++, knowing the standard and spec is pretty important. Kind of expected for someone senior, mainly because the language is so huge. So many things aren't intuitive. Yeah, I would say it is important, but it's also like, it's hard. Like even trying to learn, I wrote a C compiler for a pretty substantial subset of C89, and I think I got most of the stuff implemented. I did not, where I kind of ran out of gas was implementing like floating points stuff, and there's just too many, just an endless permutation of things to support. And when you extend that to C++, there's just so many corner cases and things that can interact, and it's just like, it never ends. Have anyone seen JC 2 cents Linux video? I have not. Keywords of other uses in C++ versus C. Linus code reviews, would he get himself killed if he was in a different settings? Yeah, maybe. If it's it's a face-to-face thing, maybe. Japan doesn't have the good worker rights, so crazy amount of work's normal. That's not good. That's not good for your mental health. To have to work 100 hours a week and be replaced by AI. Whenever I see you live, you give me a villain vibe, bro. Just the way you were sitting in the dark. And the title also says World Domination. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a villain vibe. Maybe that helps with the marketing. If you guys watched the JAI demo, Jablo presented his languages design philosophy. Lambda.com for reference. I have not looked into it. You know, a guy who mailed J-Blow saying he wanted to make a 2D game with JAI. J-Blow gave him access to the beta. Eastern countries, mental health, what's that? Yeah, Japan has, it's an interesting, it's such a clean and efficient looking society, but I guess the price of all that, like, cleanliness is, like, really strong, forced social cohesion. And it's, and it puts a great strain on the people. Keep it up, bro. I hope you success in what you're doing. Gotta go now. Bye. Thanks for stopping by and for the kind words. You're late. What are we doing tonight? Same thing we do every night. Try to take over the world. What are your plans for future work-wise, except for world domination? Like your YouTube videos? Too bad you're not posting more often. Are you a full-time YouTuber now? Yeah, it's kind of becoming that way. So this I just finished. Well, part of the reason I haven't posted as many videos was the last week was getting through taxes. I have gotten back to posting a bit. I made a video today. It'll be out tomorrow. It's just a simple shorts. Yeah, getting through taxes and getting the video I posted about immigration. I spent a long time working on that, and I was kind of hoping that one would really pop off and bring in a lot of revenue. But unfortunately, it did not. I guess there's not many people who are interested in immigration. Yeah, so that video took. It was like, oh, I got sick one week, and it was over a month, like at least a month and a half I spent on that. I think I'm gonna set a goal of maybe I haven't figured out exactly what it's going to be, but there's a ton of things I could say. Like, people ask me, honestly, the streaming, an unexpected consequence of streaming is that I get a lot of ideas for things for videos. And so I may actually just go back and like watch some of my live streams and like click around and just find like times when I started saying something, and then just write down some notes and try to quickly churn out some videos that are slightly better worded versions of questions that I answered on live stream, and make some videos out of that. And that'll just kind of pump out some content quick to get some more revenue going. Really enjoyed that video. That's good. I hope some relevant people watch it, and then it leads to some positive impact on the world. People like the simple, racist insert immigration. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think there's like, most people want to be good, but it almost seems like the media and the government almost like wants people to have conflict. I don't know. The government has not done a great job on many things, and the cynical thing people say sometimes is that the government is using that as a distraction. And the The more the time goes by, the more I wonder if that isn't exactly what they're doing. All right, this works. I have a whole bunch of I have a ton of code for like setting masks and activating and deactivating layers and stuff. And it's full of, it's like overly complicated and doing more work than it needs to. And because of some past bugs that I had, I actually, I should test another case. Because of some past bugs I had, I added more than I needed to. It was actually a really subtle bug where I didn't realize that for the help menu I was not sending some of the events that it was supposed to have. So it wasn't detecting the screen updates properly. All right, this looks good. Will not divide us. I don't know. I think the globalist overlords are very good at dividing us. Apparently, there's outrage in certain groups against Superman movie because the director said it's an immigration story. I don't know what happened. Like things were pretty, like the kind of like utopian world of equality and inclusion. With like we kind of had that back when I was young. We didn't have so much conflict all the time, and anyone could do anything. But now we're just not going to do that anymore, I guess. We're just going to argue all the time, which is another reason why I'm saying like if people are arguing, if pirate software is making drama about like coding styles and stuff like that, and if that's getting into the mainstream, that's or getting anywhere near the mainstream, that's positive for society. Even though it's like those are bike shedding arguments about how you initialized your arrays and stuff, but it's still more constructive than people arguing about Superman. How do people go off to caring about fictional characters this deeply? He landed illegally. To some extent, I think it's also just marketing. Like I think the average person doesn't care too much about it, but the average person will read a title and be like, have you heard about this ridiculous thing? And so basically you just advertised the Superman movie, or what was it? Yeah, Superman movie. Is that a new Superman movie? Or is that like one that came out years ago? Because I didn't even, honestly, if you asked me to name a movie that has been released in the last like 3 years, I don't even know. I think, what was it? Oppenheimer and Barbie. Those were two big movies that were released I don't know, a couple of years ago or something. New Superman. That's probably what it is. It's probably just like they were just like, how do we sell this? And we'll just say it's like something related to whatever's in the news. Until like, if it wasn't that, they'd relate it to like something about like I don't know, Iran, or it's a movie about, they put something in with like, trying to infiltrate a bunker or something. Seems how there are adults who love Disney adults. I think I'm surrounded by controversy already that has nothing to do with the story. I think there's a certain percentage of the population, like 5%, who are just like they're just like waiting for their favorite news source to tell them what to be outraged about. And those are the kind of people who lead the conversation, and then the media just reports on this 5% who like, just are recreationally offended by things. Next headline, Superman is Jewish. And I don't know. But maybe you should get a job working on the marketing department for those movie companies. All right, that simplified this a bit. Sorry if it's too personal question, but what does your YT revenue look like nowadays after going viral? So it's been a pretty significant decrease since the video went viral. The last few months, it's been like about $1,800. And I think this is the first month where it's maybe going to end up being a little bit higher. So that's obviously down quite a bit. I still was able to pay off. I still was able to get quite a bit ahead. I was able to pay off all the debt that I had, pay for the root canal and stuff. And I also got a second camera, which just makes my video production much faster. So I now, like for the streaming, I have the camera set up there, and it's like it's difficult to convey how much time it saves to just have a couple better pieces of equipment, because I don't have to tear down and connect stuff, and then I got to set because I have cheap lenses, I have to like focus the camera and stuff. But anyway, that's not still it's like less than $2,000 a month revenue. So that's not it's not super sustainable. It's basically putting me like break even. But I need to. That's why I need to pump out a bunch more long form videos to get the revenue up. The daily live streaming thing, that was kind of more of an experiment. I started this series because my eviction hearing was coming up, and I had a bunch of random distractions, and I also wanted to work in this game. So I decided it might make sense to experiment, like, can I be productive while live streaming? And then also it makes a bit of revenue. And I was also interested to see, like, do I get many channel members and stuff? And at first I was getting more channel members. It's not, I would say most of them that I get now are not, most of them are gifted. So I don't actually accumulate many channel members through this. But I think it's like the streaming, like all the different content delivery methods feed on each other. It really seems like if I did live, if I just did live streaming from the start and focused on that, I don't think I'd get really any viewers at all. The viewers on the live stream almost exclusively come as a result of watching some videos. And it is kind of it seems like an okay way to derive like easy revenue. If I have a video that goes viral, then I can just go live, and then there's people who come into the chat and give $5 or something, or become a member. But yeah, I think I don't know. The YouTube algorithm is also I can't see my. I just noticed I can't see my concurrent viewers down there. I guess I can see them up there. Yeah, actually, it seems like the stream is almost seems like it's artificially capped at like 20 viewers or something. I don't really know how the YouTube algorithm works. It also seems weird. Like if people send a bunch of super chats, if I do really well in super chats, my video views go down. So it almost seems like my overall revenue on the channel is capped, or like if it's like filtered through a moving average or something. Headlines would go crazy. Captain America. There's a Nazi saying. Yeah, I won't read all that. So I have the struct that I want to serialize to CSV. The struct is big and nested. I used Boost PFR, which got me some results after hours of struggling. But it has a limitation too. You cannot do reflection on objects that aren't simply aggregate. Why is C++ like this? I'm not sure. That's that kind of problem is the kind of problem that I expect to see in C++. It cannot do reflection on objects that aren't simple aggregate. I don't even know exactly what the definition of reflection would be in C++, other than like is that through like templating and stuff? Because I know the templating system, I never really learned the templating system of C++ very well. Do you or what kind of games do you play? Just curious. Since you're now developing your own game. Honestly, I don't really play any games. The last game I played was Minecraft, and that was I haven't played that in a couple of years now. Looks like C++ 26 will support reflection. Neat. Now it could be even more complicated. Is there like a social hierarchy on the platform too? Where if you earn more money than your bracket, you'll be suppressed? I'm not sure. I've actually I kind of assume there's probably like in the monetization and like views and stuff, it almost seems like there is a honestly this would probably be a good way to design the platform, is that when you pay someone, like there are cases where how you pay your creators, like your best creators, you want to pay them the most amount of money and you want them to be disproportionate success. It's not like you want to keep them on the platform, but you also want the advertising. Like for example, Mr. Beast, a lot of people saw Mr. Beast and like his, giving money to charity and doing nice stuff. That was like very good marketing. Like Mr. Beast as a person was good marketing for the platform. And so now, of course, there's been all those controversies and stuff, but most of the people have seen him for like building wells in Africa and, the curing blind people and stuff. But I think for like the mid-tier people, or there's like several, I think, different profiles and categories of people that would make content. So there's the person that just made a couple of videos, like cat videos, and then they get monetized, and that person's making like a few dollars. Like the income for them is inconsequential, and for them, you can just pay them a token amount. Like you can pay them like it could be $1, $6, $17 a day, or even even 17 is like quite a bit. But for that person, they wouldn't know the difference between getting $5 a day or like 17 cents in a day. And so for that person, you can kind of like shaft them on the views and like use that person to subsidize other people who, because for every one of those people, there's probably 1,000 of those people for every person who's like really trying to make an income off the platform. And so you can kind of use, if someone's a bit more serious about it, you can, those people can get the short end of the stick, and then they can kind of subsidize the other, like if you just do like take whoever's like contributing the most positively to the platform, and then do like a log scale or something, where your income is like, it's based on some kind of like log scale. So if you're like in the top 100, you just automatically make a certain amount. And then if you're in the next tier down, you make like 1/10 of that, and then it just keeps going down. I would not be surprised if they designed it that way, because you don't really need, if some of the people don't need the money, then you don't necessarily need, you could support more dedicated creators that are making more content by directing more views to them, or by just keeping them supported and on the platform. Reflection is operating on type of object. In my case, I was iterating over struct type to grab field type dynamically. interesting. I guess I didn't really. I didn't really know you could do that. I don't know. I guess if there's a way to use macros or something to like dynamically create a static type and hard code everything with macros and lots of repetition. Boost VFR lets you do that, but it has a limitation. It cannot work if struct member. Struct has members that are C arrays. I don't know, maybe there's a way. Is there a way to like manually write the serialization yourself with like function pointers or something somehow? If you could go back 15 years, what are some things you would have done differently? Are there any? It's hard to say. I do get variations of this question off and on. Actually, that's one of those things that it would probably make a decent dedicated video, because I keep answering it. I would say there's errors of prediction and errors of strategy, and I think my strategy to go into this field was the correct one at the right time, but the specific decisions that I made dramatically decreased how much money I could have made and where I could have been. And most of those decisions, they're almost like arbitrary decisions, like the decision to not stay at NVIDIA and not max out my stock options. That was probably like the most significant, impactful decision. But then again, if I went with that, the actual winning decision was not to work at NVIDIA, it was to buy their stock, which I didn't need to get a degree to buy the stock. I could have just bought it, dropped out of high school and bought it, and then did nothing for 15 years and become a millionaire. Issue is that struct also keeps changing. So the best way is to do a reflection and grab the members of struct dynamically. Well, whatever works, I guess. I'm out of my element. Like I said, I haven't kept up with C++. And if you asked me about reflection in C++, I actually don't even know. I haven't done that before. All right, let me finish this before I forget what I was doing. curious if C++ devs here know any tips. We got 19 people here, so hopefully there's at least one other C++ guru. My sister's best friend's gardener's stepson told me about this domination you so carelessly speak of. It's a very, very distant association. That's how you ended up here? Can't share links here. I guess you could probably just make it like a toy example, like a 5-line example, and paste it. That's probably fine. And I assume it won't get censored. And I guess if it does get censored, I guess you guys can see the live chat if it does get censored. I think. Tomorrow I will receive a high-speed ADC and embark on a journey to plug my Raspberry Pi into the AC circuit and do Fourier analysis. That sounds very interesting. If I had more time and money, I'd like to play around with stuff like that. Get some logic analyzers and the amount of people that do that work is much lower than the number of people doing crappy web apps. Yeah. You mentioned you were doing you were using Boost to serialize it. There's got to be some other. There's got to be some other thing that can do like a library for serialization. I would think. I mean, one option, like depending on depending on how much time, depending on the cost benefit analysis of this, if this is just like one struct, if it's like a struct that can be isolated to a single file, you could imagine like write a Python program that opens one header file with this one structure in it, and then it literally just uses Python to parse the code for the structure. And if it's like a fairly predictable structure, you should be able to just generate Python code that generates hard-coded C++ code that literally just serializes that specific JSON object, and running that. Or if you don't want Python, you can also write it in a C++ program or something and run it, or it probably makes more sense to be a script. And then as part of your build process, you could have your own code generation step for generating the serialization function for the arbitrary header file. The amount of work that would take, I would estimate that would take on the order of a couple hours of work. Actually, that I haven't used AI much, but that sounds like something that AI could probably do. Like you could probably, even if just take a minimal example, strip out all the proprietary information and stuff, eventually, like, here's an example of a structure. Write a Python program that parses arbitrary structures of this form and then outputs the C++ code necessary to JSON serialize the elements of this exact structure, and that'll get you close. That's one option, and then that Python program becomes part of your build process. Outside of crazy macro stuff, yeah, I mean, macros are code generation, but it just so happens that the built-in code generation macros of C++ or C++ and C are like completely insane. And for many cases, it'd probably be just easier to write a Python program. With C++ 26 solve that problem? If it does, it's now more complicated. Don't do much reflection, near zero. I do sometimes. It depends on the problem I'm solving. All right. On the circuit, that's I'm going to consider that basically spam. Your second chat, I approve of that. But this is there's enough conversation on that everywhere else. Go has really good semantics for election and type assertion. Yeah, I've never used Go, but the more I hear people tell me about it, the more it sounds like a decent language to me. Is Planet Labs a buy point? Is this that a stock trading question? I don't have no knowledge or opinion on that subject. What are some programming methods for covering the missing 10 minutes of Epstein's jail cell footage? I have no opinions on that subject. Now, my goal is to figure out I want to reduce some of these extra classes that I've hanging around here. And particularly this statement. That's making, eventually this should go away. How are you going to take over the world if you don't know finance? That's easy. I actually just made a video. If check my channel. It's my second last video on world domination, where I go over my plan. There's a minute cut. Yeah, there's a lot of news about that for sure. But like I said, let's keep discussion of that out here. That kind of conversation will go downhill quickly. Heard of Fountain, the podcasting Bitcoin app? Nope, never heard of it, and I never ever want to hear about it. On the circuit, you almost at this point you almost look like a bot, although you're a paying channel member, and you're pushing you're promoting a rug pull cryptocurrency app. Maybe you are taking your learner's permit test. TLSIE. What is that? Or like a trucking license or driving license? That's a pretty random. Definitely a random sequence of chats promoting mentioning Epstein, promoting cryptocurrency, and then mentioning you're taking your traffic laws, something, alcohol. I don't know what you're talking about. Traffic law and substance abuse education. Oh, it's just were you caught doing something you're not supposed to be doing, and now via a court order were issued to complete a traffic law and substance abuse education course. You're 17? Oh, okay. Okay, so just regular learner's permit. Okay, so that's good. You're not in trouble yet. So you're only 17. Well, behave yourself and to get your license, and then stay away. Don't lose all your money in cryptocurrency. New Hampshire, you don't even need learner's permit. Was able to drive without one. Interesting. Drunk drivers suck. Always them who survive. Yeah, it's one of those. There's a lot of like dumb decisions you can make that cause negative consequences, but you know, like drinking in your house, you can like fall and step on glass or something, and it's not a big deal. But there's especially like back where I'm from, there's always like a couple of people a year, like teenagers, who would just be drinking and driving, go off the road, and then that's it. They don't exist anymore. And of course, the other, arguably worse, is you ruin someone else's life, and then you have to deal with the fallout from that. And ever considered moving to America? I think New Hampshire doesn't have any state tax. I was in Seattle for I have literally lived in the United States for a year of my life. I was in Santa Clara, San Jose for 4 months at NVIDIA, and then in Seattle for a total of 8 months. should switch to purely property tax. Yeah, there's I think there's some good economic models on like the economic theory, but like taxing land is just like it's like the ultimate, just tax like the value of the land as some percentage instead of having the bureaucracy. One of the biggest wastes is the bureaucracy of taxes. Like I just said I did my accounting recently, and that took like a ton of time to do. And now I have to pay, it's probably going to be like on the order of like $2,000 to an accountant to get them to like file it officially and stuff, for the privilege of probably paying like, I'm probably going to have to pay like less than $1,000 in taxes this year for business taxes, because I'm not making enough money. So I'm paying wasting all this time and effort just to pay the government like next to nothing. And if the whole process was just simpler, then I wouldn't have to waste like the account. There's nothing that's produced by doing taxes. If the healthcare is bad, as we have down here, getting a family doctor is near impossible. I have a family member who tried for a couple of years to get a family doctor. He got one, and then that family doctor was like, he was a recently arrived like immigrant who, he gave him an injection, and he gave him like the wrong amount. And my family member noticed this, and then he's like, "Oh, geez, I guess I've got to write myself up about that." And then apparently that family doctor like disappeared, and he was asking about it, and they said that his medical license expired, so he just isn't a doctor anymore or something. So that was a few years ago, and then I think he found a new doctor. And everything has like waiting lists and stuff. There's like multi-year waiting lists to see a specialist in anything. I haven't been to a doctor for anything in like over 10 years, I guess now at this point. Might actually fix the housing crisis. It couldn't hurt. Any increase in efficiency can be directed to something useful. Taxing wealth, not income. Tell me you don't understand how taxes work without telling me. Are you paraphrasing what I said about like the taxing the land value? I think it makes sense if you have a valuable piece of, if you have land with a lot of potential, taxing the taxing a percentage of what can be extracted from it to like basically to incentivize people to use land at its maximum potential, I think is good. I'd rather a land tax than wealth tax. Taxes don't work. Rich avoid the taxes all the time. I think if we had more like corporate financial literacy among the lower classes, like what I find is that like ultimately, like to get housing, someone has to pay for housing. Whether it's the taxpayer, whether it's an investor, whether it's a speculator, whether it's the person that lives in it, someone pays for it. So to finance it, that money has to come from somewhere. And that there's not of like people who advocate for low income housing and stuff. There's not a lot of literacy. Like there's not a lot of literacy about what goes into actually financing anything And I think if there was more literacy around that, it would seem like all these the super left-leaning organizations would advocate for specific policies around things like real estate financing. But there's, for the most part, I don't even see any like discussion of those concepts at all. Eliminate capital gains tax. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of improvements that could be made, but we probably won't get them. All right, let's see if that does what I want. Don't have a trust fund, just like gambling in the stock market. High five. Do you understand how write-offs work, how trust law works, how a business works? You only pay on what you actually make. Just because someone is worth $1 billion doesn't mean they have $1 billion. I understand a bunch of that for the most part. It can get pretty complicated. I looked into like what's required to set up a trust and stuff, and there's a lot of it gets complicated. IDK, why people find it so offensive to increase 0.1 tax on small percentage of the population. Actually, one implication of taxing, of like, this is just like an unfortunate reality of like the evil of taxing the rich is, and this is a decent argument, is that if you, like for example, the corporate tax rate, when a company decides, like I even had to think about this when I set up my business, there's a provincial tax rate, and I technically could have incorporated my business in Alberta, in the jurisdiction of Alberta, but for a lower tax rate, because they have the lowest provincial tax rate in the country. And I asked my accountant, like, couldn't anyone just incorporate there? Because like you don't need to physically be there. You just need you could have. I think you'd even have like a mailbox address or something. Or I don't even know if you necessarily need that. But the point is, like, if you decrease taxes, if you increase taxes too much, the people who otherwise would pay, like the rich people, will just locate either themselves or the business to a different jurisdiction where the tax rate is lowest. Because like if it's just a mathematical thing, if you want to build a business that makes sneakers or something like that, you're just going to go down the list and say like, okay, what country has the best like tax advantage rate, and then you go there. And so by things like lowering taxes, like if the U.S. dramatically lowered taxes for corporations, an immediate consequence of that is businesses like let's say Canada says we're going bankrupt, we get to tax the rich, we increase our taxes because people are like, oh, this is a great progressive policy, we're like going to punish the rich people. Canada increases taxes, U.S. decreases taxes. Instantly, 1 microsecond after that happens, all of the Canadian businesses will leave. At least the ones that have the means to. I mean, if I had more money, I would immediately think like, why would I stay here and be taxed more? So that's an unfortunate consequence when you live when you have the ability to choose in a global marketplace. Name my child Ronald Reagan. If trickle down ever shown to work at all. I'd be pretty happy with a new tax bracket set at 100 million. Is 1% higher. Companies in the US already have moved overseas. That's what has already happened. Alphabet Incorporated HQ is in Ireland to avoid certain taxes in the US. Should pay taxes in direct proportion to amount of wealth you own. No matter you're whinging about liquidity. I don't know. I think taxing on wealth versus taxing on profit. I think it makes way more sense to tax based on profit as opposed to wealth. I think that there is a good argument about like, what if you're sitting on a pile of cash and you're not leveraging it. Well, I guess in this high inflation environment, you're getting punished heavily. Like technically you are, even if you keep cash, you don't do anything with it, you are getting taxed by like at least 3% or something through inflation. I think engineers and software engineers should be exempt from taxes. I like that idea. Learn what a straw man is in Phil 101. There's more nuance to it. A lot of rich people set their income to a small value and use the wealth to get debt that is untaxable income. You said it yourself, you probably pay more tax than Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I mean, the tax is just one aspect of it. I think it does make sense. Like it is, if the business doesn't happen where you are, it doesn't really matter how high the tax is. Tax could be like 100% wealth tax every year. But if the tax strategy is bad enough that everyone leaves, then there's no one to tax. And I think the UK is going through this problem right now. I mean, if you want to see the kind of downward spiral of like things getting worse and people leaving and then not having enough tax base, so raising the taxes, and It can get to a point where it's a vicious cycle. They also make their money more, which is rewarded by lower taxes because it creates more consumers who pick up the difference. The more you consume, the more tax you pay. Tax on a profit creates perverse incentive to hide your wealth in stupid, purposeful losses. Yes. Yes, there are perverse incentives. So, like technically, like if you're obeying the law and complying with tax law, you're supposed to, like for example, if you buy a bunch of equipment or something, like one traditional, like a tempting thing people would try to do is say like, oh, I made too much money this year, I better buy like, some pure gold faucets or something for my bathroom or something, and then like, oh, they got damaged, and now you just have some like, scrap gold that you lost or something. So you're trying to push something off as an operating expense that would be 100% deductible, and then but actually get something that's tangible and has purpose. That's a predictable way people would try to avoid it. So you need actual like enforcement of the tax law, and I know the tax authority does crack down on that stuff. They make sure you're doing like the right depreciations and stuff, and because otherwise no company would ever take a loss. You would just like whatever, if you made like $100,000 in profit, you just buy like $100,000 in supplies, or like buy something that you'll use eventually. Buy like gift cards or something like that, something that can be like liquidated easily, and claim it's an operating expense. Carney needs to revise the tax code to be more competitive. Yeah, there's lots of improvements that could be made, but will they be made? I see the same argument everywhere I go. Things won't change because taxes are inflation. Taxes and inflation are too high. That's why everyone puts their wealth into homes. Yeah, I think from everything I've read and researched, I think it does. I think the high inflation environment, like it's not going to be insane hyperinflation, but I think it's just going to be persistent, much higher than 2% inflation for like a long time. And going from like 2 to 3% compounding inflation is actually like a pretty big deal, I think. And might end up being like 4% or something. The money they are paying in tax is going to building the business bigger. If it wasn't, it would get taxes. All right, let's finish the thing I was doing. All right, that does not do what I want. It is still not clearing the help menu. On second thought, I probably don't want to do this anyway, because that's just looking for a change. Just push the rich button, just start live streaming and then fundraise $12 billion. That's the secret. Get a good idea, prove it out, make a business plan, find investor partners. It's easier said than done. If you you can bootstrap a business like I have, and then you could potentially be like I am, be 10 years in and not that much further ahead. You can also get investors, and there's a ton of like horror stories of getting investors and having them take over the company and boss you around, or sell you like convertible debts, and then the business doesn't work, and now you're like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Once you have enough disposable income, stock market becomes like a fun theme park. The cap gains and turns like a clown kicks in you in the nads when you get off the roller coaster. That's an interesting way to think about it. This chat sucks. Van, I think it was a reference to a comedy skit by a famous comedian. Honestly, I think there's lots to criticize about both. I watch a lot of Chris Farley. I watch a lot of like, you know, rich people podcasts and stuff. Like if you watch the All In podcast, and you'll notice that, like, one of the main things they talk about, and even other like financial podcasts, housing podcasts and stuff, they obsess about interest rates, and it makes sense that like most of their success is not like thinking or calculating anything really smart, but like how to build houses or manage the economy and stuff. It's all about predicting what the Federal Reserve or the central bank is going to do in the next like 6 months. And if you successfully guess the human behavior of what the bank is going to do and whether they will cut or won't cut, like all your money will basically flow from that. And I think that's not really that doesn't add a lot of value to the economy. There's a lot of like talking past each other for the people who advocate that rich people pay their share. Like there's lots of stuff. There's lots of specific stuff that we could go after, like in perverse incentives and stuff that would make it so the predatory rich people didn't win, but the actual good rich, the people who deserve to get rich would get rich. Trade my own account and a trust account. I get very, very sad when the answer is just to make people pay more taxes. There's lots of investment company out there for people with ideas. Yeah, I don't know if there's investment money, but it also comes with terms. If you're doing a extremely high growth startup, you have no choice than to raise venture capital. But if you can I think if you can bootstrap something on your own, then you can remain in control. You're much more likely to remain in control for longer. And then your company is less likely to become just like a predatory, parasitic thing. Who's the winner now? I'm not sure. The investment environment in Canada is actually terrible. Way too overweight in housing because it's seen as safe with steady growth. It's one of the least productive investment classes. And this hogs investment from real companies. Yep. And anyone trying to build a company is just struggling to pay rent all the time. I can only speak on my experiences. I bootstrapped my own companies, had partners, had investors in the US. Were they positive experiences? I know that can work out. I think it can work out if you if the people you partner with, if you like know them and trust them well. But I mean, there's lots of like startup events and stuff where people just go and meet like random people and they've only known for a week and they're like, we're going to start a company. And I think that rarely works out well. If you like went to school with someone and like if you've known someone since high school and you have some idea how they behave under stress and stuff, then they might be a good person to do a business with. But otherwise, it can go south pretty quick if you're not on the same page. Interest rates do suck right now, but ideally keeping interest rates high will fix the housing market over time. It's out of hand right now. Ultimately, Fed's goal is 2%. I think they actually revised that, didn't they? They said like, maybe we'll, 2% is arbitrary. Maybe we'll be okay with 3%. Problem is usually everyone doesn't carry their load in a partnership. Yeah, that would be a big deal, like figuring out how, like, not, of course, some people go through difficult times and people get sick or have to attend to stuff, so you'd have to some kind of good consensus figured out beforehand. As few as possible partners is best. Yeah, I would imagine that's true. There's also, you can find tons of stories of people like doing a startup with other people and or getting like investors involved. Like if you get the wrong type of investor, like the kind of soulless investor who doesn't care about the idea at all, and they just want to like squeeze money out of it. And then there's a whole ecosystem of like the like, I don't know what you call it, like a investment funds and stuff that they start off with like 100 million to invest in a bunch of companies, and you end up with some guy who just has an MBA and he ends up like reviewing like thousands and thousands of applications to invest in companies, and then they pick yours, and they're like, a few years down the road, they're just like, all right, we got to squeeze. We've been waiting for a couple of years. We have to see some return on this. So we're going to squeeze as much as we can, trying to get more control over the company, trying to replace the CEO, trying to push people out in order to maximize return. And a lot of those companies too, like the ones seeking like high growth, they'll basically force the company to step on the gas and either like, number one, achieve high growth, or spectacularly fail and go out of business and end up with a bunch of debts. Without any in between, with like no, maybe they could have had a business that grew at like 20%, but that's not acceptable. But you need 1,000% return to justify the fund. That's why I haven't been able to find a partner. It's sticky when we have to figure out how to ensure no party is taken advantage of. Yeah, I mean, I obviously did not have a business partner, and in hindsight, I'm glad. I mean, there's like reflecting on my schooling and stuff. There are like a handful of people who hypothetically I could see myself actually working with to like build a business together, and like to agree and to be able to negotiate and resolve differences. But most of those people are so like smart and ambitious that they're doing their own thing. Most of our funding comes from U.S. investors. A few rare whales in Canada. Probably like 90% of the U.S. Yeah, probably most of it does come from the U.S. Canadian investors pretty risk averse. Yeah, there's also like a whole category of like angel investors, people that'll invest like less than $100,000 in your business, but some of them are like kind of weird and hit and miss. They're like people who got kind of financially lucky one way or another, but they want to role play the idea of being like some hotshot investor, and can be like, depending on their eccentric personality, they could become very involved and be annoying, or have strange expectations, or want a strange involvement in the business. So I still don't quite know why would I remove this. It's not working. Just to remove this, removing that's desirable for simplifying this whole thing. Because eventually, some of like these operations, I want to be able to like move those into the class itself, so that way this like merge down function is just an operation between the layers. I feel like it would be easier to scale my business if I wasn't wearing every hat. In the trades, though, going to be a lot different than tech or finance. Wood floor alchemist. Is that your trade? You're a wood floor alchemist? Do floor finishing? Wood floor refinishing. Okay. Yeah, actually, what was it? It was on Morning Brew. Morning Brew has a YouTube channel, and there's this girl who does these interesting YouTube segments, and she did a thing recently. Apparently, like the latest thing is private equity is destroying everything in society now, just like buying all these businesses and making them terrible. And one of the latest things is they're buying up trades businesses, and there's like a financialization model where you buy a successful small trades business, and then you basically like automate all the stuff, take the customer lists and automate the customer service with some crappy AI, and and then just like bring in these kind of just blank slate, like not very well trained employees, and then the service goes down, but you just keep charging the same amount, and it's apparently a very profitable model. You should check that video out on, I think it was the morning brew on private equity buying plumbing businesses, and I think some other trades businesses. Well, I think it's 12:30. I think I may call it a night. I got a little bit done. I'm doing like just some like pigeonhole optimization of simplifying this thing, and once I do this for long enough, it'll be so simple there'll be nothing left to simplify, and then I can move on to the next. The next step will be there's actually some bugs in these merging algorithms, so I'll eventually fix those. AI is starting to run rampant in the industry right now. Guys are implementing AI to answer phones. Sounds insane. Yeah, I would imagine it. I would imagine it's like a horrible customer experience, because depending on how bad the AI is. I actually this was not even AI, but I had to call the tenant board for something. I had a question, and I called them, and they have this like they have a really horrible help menu. It was this thing like they're like, please listen carefully as our menu options have recently changed. So you listen to this 5-minute long thing, and they're like, if you're calling because you have this problem, press this, and if you're calling because you have this problem, list this. And it's basically like a tree of menu options, and they make you listen to every single. So it was like 20 minutes to get through them all, and then by the time I listened to all the, they would force you to listen to explanations to questions you did not have before they would give you the other options to choose from. It was just very, very inefficient, and that's going to be our future. You won't be able to talk to people. You'll have to talk to some garbage AI that tells you all the wrong answers and doesn't understand things. But that's what's profitable, so that's where we're going. Anyway, have a good night.